So usually at the start of an episode of Very Weird Wrestling, I set the scene for us, I center us in the historic context, I try to explain where and when we are in wrestling history and the state of the business at the time. But the ever wonderful people at my Patreon have so happily voted for the pay-per-view directly after one of the previous ones we've already covered, the infamous Bash at the Beach 2000. This is the pay-per-view after that one. So if you haven't already, I would highly recommend checking out that video first, and I'll pop a link in the description. And those of us who've seen Bash at the Beach 2000, we know that that show very infamously featured a worked shoot. Or was it a total work, or was it a total shoot? Nobody can really seem to agree. But the point is, it resulted in head booker Vince Russo and top star Hulk Hogan falling out big time. Hogan legitimately left WCW in the aftermath of Bash at the Beach 2000 along with Eric Bischoff, which means that Vince Russo, at the time of this event that we're talking about today, is in total control. Absolute power! And if you know anything about Vince Russo, you'll know that he wasn't exactly renowned for booking wrestling in a traditional sense. By which I mean, he had no respect for kayfabe. So if you thought that Bash at the Beach episode featured a little bit too much fourth wall breaking for your personal taste, get those old man opinions in the bin! Old man opinions? We're in the 21st century. Get with the times, dude. Yes, in this episode, we've got more worked shoots, more match stipulations that are so ridiculous they're impossible to take seriously, and more breaking of the fourth wall. Incessantly so, I would even say. Open references, constant open references in this pay-per-view to it all being fake. That's what we want. This is New Blood Rising. It's August 13th in the year 2000 and we are in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And you might have noticed at this point, New Blood Rising, quite a unique pay-per-view name. What's that all about? And as some of you will already know, it's named after the overarching struggle in WCW around this time in storyline between the New Blood faction and the Millionaires Club faction. The New Blood are some of the younger, kind of undercard talent, up-and-comers, all sick of these old-timers hanging on to their spots, the likes of Nash, Sting, Hogan. Hogan's not really here anymore, but you know what I mean. And let's ignore the fact that some members of the New Blood weren't really that young or that new at all. That's actually not the group's biggest problem. The real problem is that they're heels. So you've got this faction of new, hungry up-and-comers that you want the fans to get behind, but you make them heel. And then the very popular already old-timers are the baby faces. I covered all that last time. The pay-per-view's named after the New Blood. And that storyline's already over. Before this show, the storyline is done. Yes, that's right, the show is named after a storyline that isn't really relevant at all anymore. Hooray! So what do we have going on? Wait until you see the state of these match graphics, by the way. So the big matches are a Bash at the Beach rematch between the new champion, Booker T, and the old dethroned champion, Jeff Jarrett. We've also got a big number one contenders triple threat match between Kevin Nash, Goldberg, and Scott Steiner, which ends in utter garbage, spoiler alert. And we have one of the most ludicrous stipulation matches of all time. No, maybe two. We might have two of the most ludicrous. Stay tuned. The opening match in a second is going to be like a six-man tag team ladder match for a gold record and a recording contract. And that is not one of the... When I'm talking about the ludicrous stipulations, that's actually not one of them. And I guess just before we begin, let's talk about the announced team as well. It's the same as last time. Tony Schiavone, who is increasingly checked out at this point. Scott Hudson, who's trying his best, but is kind of screaming into the void. And Mark Madden, who is rubbish. He's crap. And also, I just want to mention that there are 11 matches to talk about here. 11. None of them are longer than 15 minutes, but it's still a hefty amount of wrestling. First person we see on the broadcast is early era UFC knockout artist and legitimate terrifying man, Tank Abbott. But rather than being terrifying here, he's just busting a move, guys. That's because when you have someone on your roster who could knock out a horse, obviously you make him the manager of your lower mid-card comedy boy band. In fairness, Tank really seems to be enjoying this role. And that boy band is, of course, 3 count, consisting of Shane Helms, who would go on to be the Hurricane, Shannon Moore, who would go on to be Matt Hardy's sidekick, and Evan Courageous, who would go on to be Evan Courageous. Tank gets on the mic, and I noticed for the first time that his t-shirt has little nipple holes cut into it. No observation to be made here, let's just all let that sink in for a while. They do a song for a bit. This is how the pay-per-view's starting. It's obviously it's an awful song, but their heels, I guess it's effective at getting heat until they are finally interrupted by their opponents tonight. And yes, the lads are back from last time. It's the Young Dragons, Kaz Hayashi, Jamie-san, and Jimmy Yang. He would go on to be Jimmy Wang Yang. And you might remember them as comedy jobbers who tried and failed to beat up the commissioner of the show 3-on-1. So it's good to see that they're in a serious feud now. And as I briefly mentioned before, yes, this is a 6-man 3-on-3 ladder match for not one but 2 prizes, 3 counts gold record and their recording contract too. Both are suspended above the ring. Now this raises certain questions that I, as a viewer, just naturally had. Questions like, well, what are the rules there? Is it the first one to pull down both prizes, that team wins? Or is it kind of a one fall each kind of situation? Things that you would naturally be inquisitive about. And this actually really made me appreciate modern WWE because, God, modern WWE, they would really hammer this point home, wouldn't they? They would go over these rules again and again and again exhaustively. Not here, though. They brush past the stipulation as if it's like a run-of-the-mill tag match. And they're like, yeah, obviously the Dragons want 3 count to stop recording, so they want to get the prizes, and 3 count want to keep making music, so I'm like, I don't care, but tell me the rules of the match I'm about to watch. And that is very much kind of the theme of this show. A bizarre meta-narrative starts to emerge, as we'll see, where the actual wrestling on screen, the actual action in front of us, is portrayed as very unimportant, to be honest, because the real important stuff is the shoot stuff. It's what's going on behind the scenes. And I've never seen a show before that is so consistently disrespectful, not only towards the wrestling itself, but towards the audience. Because if you're not even going to pretend that the wrestling's important, why should we, the viewers, even pretend that the wrestling's important? Anyway, let's carry on. So the match begins, and to my surprise, because I was honestly expecting like comedy spots and dancing and all sorts of stuff, this is actually a total spot fest. Not that I'm necessarily a huge fan of spot fests all of the time, but in this particular setting, a spot fest is honestly maybe like the best case scenario that this match could have ended up in. There's a big brawl over the ladders to start, and then Shannon Moore gets backdropped into one, crotch spot on the ladder, Shannon goes for a pinfall for some reason, idiot. Then the faces get stacked on a ladder, and whoa, throw your mate onto them. Huge crossbody off the ladder from Jamie Noble. Oh yeah, Jamie-san is Jamie Noble, by the way. And this is all very fast-paced, and pretty exciting, actually. Inverted neckbreaker off the ladder, normal neckbreaker off the ladder, vertical suplex off the ladder. It's all going well. Maybe too well, actually. We don't want too much attention paid to the wrestling on display, so let's instead really hammer home the person who's going to get most over in this match, Tank Abbott. And as you watch this match, and all the very impressive, ludicrously athletic action on display from all 6 men involved, Tank Abbott's like always on the periphery, he's always on the apron, he's always getting heat from the crowd, he's just kind of a distraction, an annoyance getting in the way of the wrestling. Seesaw spot, sending the ladder into Jamie Noble's face. Be very careful now because, of course, that very same seesaw spot is the spot that really injured Jamie Noble's future tag team partner or security ally, Joey Mercury. And no, I will not be showing an image of his face after that injury. You can Google it if you want. I'm glad he ended up being okay. Although if I'm right, I think that injury caused him to kind of spiral for a while. It led to a lot of trouble for Joey Mercury. Glad he's doing better. Don't take ladders to the face, everyone. We get a double ladder splash to Shannon Moore, and Jamie Noble climbs up, or Jamie-san, to grab the gold record. But after he's grabbed it, and after Schiavone informs us that, the match is still going ahead, the contract is still up there, of course, things get quite strange. 2 of the members of 3 Count kick the ladder out from beneath Jamie, and as he falls, he drops the gold record, Tank Abbott catches it, and he's like, hurrah, my record now, and we just kind of move on. And the announce team say that, yeah, because Jamie Noble didn't make it back to the canvas with the gold record in his possession, that means that 3 Count actually have possession of the gold record instead because Tank Abbott, not an official participant in the match, has caught it. When has that ever been the rules of a ladder match anyway? You don't have to make it back down. That's stupid. Anyway, the Dragons now try to get back up the ladder and get the recording contract so they can split the match, 1 fall each. I don't know. But on the plus side, we do see this pretty insane mid-air sit-out powerbomb off the ladder from Jamie on Shannon. Now a guy from either team climbs a ladder, so Tank Abbott gets in the ring, pushes both ladders over. So he's pushing over one of the Young Dragons, but also is pushing over one of his own guys too. And the announce team kind of go, why would he do that? Why would he push over his own guy? I'm like, yes, I would also like to know the answer when these things happen on a WCW pay-per-view. Anyway, it doesn't matter because Evan Courageous gets up there, grabs the recording contract, and then Tank Abbott gets both the contract and the gold record, leaves the ring, heads up the ramp, and celebrates at the top of the ramp, and that's how the match ends. And this kind of sums up, again, the issue with latter-day Russo-era WCW, doesn't it? Because what we're meant to care about isn't any of the crazy action going on in the ring. We're meant to care about this side character who doesn't end up going anywhere anyway. Thanks for buying the pay-per-view. Let's move on. Backstage we go to the office of Ernest the Cat Miller, the authority figure of WCW at this time. The commissioner, a non-wrestling person, but also he wrestles actually. And not just that, but Ernest the Cat Miller, in my opinion, often beats people that he has no business beating. He's actually got a match just in a sec, but for now, he's meeting with the heel stable, the Filthy Animals, consisting of Rey Mysterio, No Mask Edition, Conan, Juventud Guerrera, Disco Inferno, and Tigress. And the Filthy Animals, they want to strike a deal. They want to all act as special guest referees in tonight's tag team title match, which is already a four-way. So there's already going to be a lot of people in that match. And now, the Filthy Animals, they all want to be special guest referee? And they also want a second part of the deal, which is that they get a title shot against the winner tomorrow night on Nitro. So this is going to be I'm suspecting this could be a bit of a mess. 'Cause I'm so messy, then I'm so flippin' clean. Sorry, I'll carry on. So the Cat says, what's in it for me? And the Filthy Animals say, if you accept this deal, we'll help you win your match tonight. And the Cat, in a line almost specifically designed to get nobody over, the Cat says, I don't really need any of your help, but I'm interested to see where this goes. So you guys have got a deal. I'm like, you don't need their help, but you're going to do it anyway. Are we engineering this show to make nobody look good? Is that what we're doing? Maybe, yes. And we don't need to wait very long for the Cat's match because that's taking place right now. And his opponent is one of the biggest global wrestling stars of the entire decade of the 90s. It's literally the Great Muta. That's who the Cat, by the way, was like, yeah, I don't need any help beating this guy. It's only the Great Muta. I'm Ernest the Cat Miller, don't you know? I am so shocked that Cat's opponent is the Great Muta that when he gets in the ring, I'm half expecting him to take off his mask and it's like Norman Smiley or someone. But no, it's the genuine Great Muta. He's not like trying his absolute best on this show or anything, given how great he was at the time, but it's still him. I don't understand the matchup here at all. I don't understand what Russo was thinking, because you've managed to book the Great Muta. Not only does he have history with WCW, so that's relevant, he's also a monumental star in Japan as well, which maybe not all of your audience are going to understand, but it's definitely something to ham up, right? Like, let's make the most of this. Let's give him a meaningful match. No, let's book him against our comedy GM instead. And let's have him win? We'll see. All right, okay, as we'll see later on, Muta actually was tentatively back in WCW around this time anyway, as part of Vampiro's Dark Carnival stable, which I find an interesting choice as well. It would be like if WWE got Tetsuya Naito in now, and we're like, well, all right, cool, we've got Tetsuya Naito in, one of the biggest stars of the previous decade in New Japan, and you're going to be a member of Dark State. And let's go. We'll see what the Dark Carnival look like later on, and they are a sick-looking tag team. I take it all back. I take it all back. Anyway, back to the match itself, and the sad thing is that I'm kind of wrong and Russo's kind of right. Yeah, maybe pair the Great Muta with Ernest the Cat Miller, because the Cat is way more over with this crowd than Muta is. Like, Cat's getting to do all the fun stuff, he cuts a promo before the match, he hits Muta with the microphone, he's getting all the early shots in, he's dancing. I'm like, oh no. Just a bit of context for how ridiculous this match is, by the way. At this time, the Great Muta would have been a former three-time IWGP Heavyweight Champion, a former G1 Climax winner, a great heel, a great babyface, the 1999 Tokyo Sports Award winner for Match of the Year, and after this show, would become the 2001 Observer Award winner for Wrestler of the Year. But you'd be forgiven if you were tuning into this show with no context or prior knowledge of wrestling. You'd be forgiven for thinking that all of that actually applied to Ernest the Cat Miller instead, because of the way he's totally poning the Great Muta in this match. Thankfully, Muta does begin to make a bit of a comeback in the match, but I'm distracted by the first of many instances on commentary of what has to be a Vince Russo-led directive, which is, let's get the announce team to sprinkle in a lot of insider terms, giving a kind of a window behind the scenes. This is all real. So we get much worse examples later on, but a notable one here, as Scott Hudson implies that Muta and Ernest the Cat Miller have real heat, he says. I would maybe give it a slight pass if he'd said it after some particularly stiff shots, but this match features like arm drags and dancing and stuff. And the second reason it's stupid is, of course, the bigger reason, which is that it instantly devalues anything presented to us as kayfabe on the show. But there's far more egregious examples of that later on. Muta's made his comeback, and now he's beating down the Cat, and I'm waiting for then the Cat to make his comeback, and I realise at this point that, oh, hang on, both of these guys, even though the crowd are more into the Cat, they're both heels, definitely. Like, Muta's a member of Vampiro's Evil Dark Carnival stable, and the Cat's just been doing some dirty dealings backstage with a heel stable in the Filthy Animals. So who are we meant to cheer here? But moreover, what's the point of this match? Anyway, speaking of the Filthy Animals, of course, they need to help Cat win this match to hold up their end of the deal. So here comes Tigress down to ringside as the crowd chant at her, "We want puppies." Thank you, Jerry Lawler, for your contribution to this show. Meanwhile, out of nowhere, this match has kind of turned into a Mid-Atlantic, like it's turned into Magnum TA versus Tully Blanchard, because we get like a cable choking spot on the outside out of nowhere. The action gets back in the ring, Cat continues to dominate, and I'm like, oh no, he is definitely being presented as the better of these two wrestlers. And then Muta has to resort to the mist to kind of retake control. The referee, rather than DQing Muta for this, decides to take matters into his own hands, or his own shirt rather, trying to use his garment to wipe the Cat's face clean of the mist. Ooh, boys. While this is all going on, Tigress hits a chair shot, like a leaping chair shot from the top on Muta. Then we get a finish that makes no sense to me, which is it's a recurring theme of this era. But basically, I'm like, all right, that's got to be the finishing sequence. Like, there we go, the distraction, the chair shot off the top, the Filthy Animals deal with the Cat. No, Muta kicks out, and I'm like, oh, interesting storyline twist there. It wasn't enough to put away the Great Muta. So now, what does this mean for the deal between the Filthy Animals and the Cat? How is that going to shake out? Maybe I've judged this too quickly. But then no, because the finish does happen straight away after it, with the Cat hitting approximately 1 million karate kicks on the Great Muta and beating him clean, and that's the finish instead. Why did they need to feed the Great Muta to Ernest the Cat Miller? Why is Ernest the Cat Miller Brock Lesnar in this scenario, but with sweet karate action? And why there? So yeah, the Filthy Animals have helped the Cat win, although it turns out, no, he didn't need their help, but he's won, and therefore they will be the special guest referees of the tag title match later on. Not yet. Backstage we go, where Buff Bagwell is looking for his mother Judy, and she's gone missing. Where could she be? If you know, you certainly know that this show is about to get even sillier. So the next match is Buff Bagwell versus Chris Kanyon. When I talked about the infamously stupid stipulations at the start of this episode, this is one of the ones I meant. And it's like the more famously stupid of the two. I think Chris Kanyon, and I think many people would share this opinion, I think he's a very underrated guy in the history of WCW. But at this time, he's got quite a strange gimmick. He's playing this deranged heel who thinks that he's Diamond Dallas Page and is just doing an impersonation of DDP. And because of this, Kanyon has been increasingly deranged over the past few weeks of programming. He's been attacking backstage workers at random, he's been hitting them with the Diamond Cutter, or the Kanyon Cutter, as he calls it, and he's particularly been targeting babyface Buff Bagwell's mother, Judy. Now, why has he been doing this then? Well, he wants Judy to be his valet. Not just that, but because he is Diamond Dallas Page, kind of, he wants her to be his Kimberly. Oh. But in case you're feeling sorry for Judy, she's no stranger to WCW at this point. No. She is, and I'm not making this up, a former WCW Tag Team Champion. Honestly. Alongside Rick Steiner, if you were wondering. Anyway, because of all of this, the next match is Chris Kanyon versus Buff Bagwell in the now infamous Judy Bagwell on a forklift match. And if Kanyon wins, then Judy has to be his manager. So when Bagwell was looking for his mother, she was on the forklift. And here she comes now. Canyon's driving her out to ringside on the forklift. And it's so visually underwhelming. Because obviously the platform hasn't been raised yet. But also the forklift's so trundling and slow. It's not like Austin commandeering some vehicle. And, oh, hell yeah. No, it's... Oh, that was a weird Austin impression. No, it's just Chris Kanyon going, bit of beep, just trundling out there in the forklift. Judy's on the front. Not being so much terrified, which would work for the storyline, but more mildly annoyed in a very motherly way. She's like, oh, why am I getting me down from up here now? Just want to remind everybody that this is a wrestling pay-per-view that people paid for to see wrestling. Paid for with their money. Anyway, Kanyon raises the platform, up Judy goes, and one side of my brain's like, not that high. Like, she'll probably be fine, but then the other side of my brain, the 2020s wrestling fan side of my brain goes, oh my god, Judy Bagwell's going to do a spot off the platform. Spoiler alert, unfortunately that does not happen. If it had happened, it could maybe single-handedly have saved this show. Before the match, Kanyon gets on the mic and explains what's going on. Originally, this was billed as a Judy Bagwell on a pole match, but Kanyon couldn't find a pole strong enough to hold Judy because she's so, in his words, so big and fat. Hence, she's on a forklift truck. Now, this is one of several storylines running around this time concurrently that center around, in my opinion, Vince Russo clearly hating overweight women, or women he perceives to be overweight. Because Judy Bagwell, I think, just looks like a middle-aged woman, bit of an auntie, and that's cool. But Russo clearly hates the thought of an overweight woman so much that he keeps shoving more and more storylines in where the joke is, look at this overweight woman. There are 3 of them on this show, and this is just the first one. I'm not making this up. You know what? This is all awful, awful writing, but I'm on Buff's side, you know? Go and save your mum. Go on, Buff. I care more about it than I care about 3 Count's gold record. 3 Count's match was the better of the 2, though. But this one starts off hot, because I guess Buff's mother being in danger has charged him with the brawling ability of Stone Cold Steve Austin in the early stages. He kicks Canyon's ass into the crowd, then back out of the crowd, then they get in the ring and he kind of wastes time dancing at this point. I'm like, bit of urgency please, mate, your mum's in danger. Then they start making pinfall attempts. And I realize at this point that, and it's one of the most like infamously quoted stipulations of all time, the Judy Bagwell on a forklift match. It's up there with like custody of Dominic Mysterio ladder match in wrestling fan lore. But what I notice here is that the stipulation is a lie. They're making pinfall attempts, so this isn't really a Judy Bagwell on a forklift match, because you don't have to retrieve her from the perch to win. No, this is a Judy Bagwell watching the match from a forklift match. Ah yes, my favourite of all stipulation. Kanyon then fetches some wire cutters and cuts off one of the turnbuckle pads, and for a while the match becomes all about who's going to get sent into the exposed turnbuckle, which, you know, it's a trope that we've seen in wrestling matches, but I'm like, in this one? What about the woman up on the... What about... Anyway, Kanyon takes not 1 but 2 bumps into the exposed turnbuckle. I'm like, wow. I mean, I guess at least it's been a pretty short match. Kicks out. So the match continues. That wasn't the finish. I'm like, why did that dominate the whole middle stretch of the match about the exposed turnbuckle if it's not even going to factor into the finish? What? And I know it doesn't matter, right? I know it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. I just enjoy just a little bit of coherence in my wrestling. Anyway, Kanyon hits the Kanyon cutter, and then Bagwell kicks out at 2, and Kanyon freaks out because he's like, what? No one kicks out of the Kanyon cutter. And then David Arquette shows up with theme music and everything. I feel like I'm just saying random words, but no, this is actually what's happening. So at this point, Mark Madden, who is kind of being the heel of the 3 commentators for this show, Mark Madden makes a huge deal at this point of David Arquette being here. He starts freaking out. He's like, oh my god, David Arquette, a great former champion in the history of WCW, and he's here tonight, oh my god. And I'm going to explain it. If you know, you know, but I'll explain in case you don't, right? So the joke here that Mark Madden is doing is that actor David Arquette is indeed a former WCW champion. The decision to make an actor the top champion in the company was one of Russo's most infamous booking decisions, and has kind of since become notorious as one of the nails in WCW's coffin, as well as one of the weirdest moments in the entire history of mainstream American wrestling. So this joke being done here by Mark Madden, this, oh my god, David Arquette, a former champion, one of the greats, and he hammers the point home, he's being very obnoxious about it. The joke here is, screw the fans, My interpretation of this Mark Madden joke is Vince Russo basically saying, screw the fans for not liking our booking. In fact, we are glad that it annoyed you. No wonder this company went out of business so soon after this. So back when Arquette became the champion, he was a babyface and was aligned with DDP and Kanyon also being a babyface at this time. But then in the aftermath of his title win, Arquette actually turned heel, screwing DDP and instead ensuring that Jeff Jarrett became champion. And then Arquette kind of disappeared from the product, probably to go back to his real job of being an actor, and Kanyon turned heel. So there is a link between Arquette and Kanyon here, but it's a tenuous one in my opinion. Like, yes, they were both friends back when they were all baby faces and the link between them was DDP, but it wasn't really a strong link between Kanyon and Arquette, and we've not... And I'm putting way more thought into this than Russo did. What am I doing? All we need to really care about is that Arquette's here to help Kanyon, and he hits Bagwell with a construction helmet. Down goes Bagwell, but he kicks out at 2 because Bagwell's like Hulk Hogan now, apparently. Bagwell very quickly hits a double blockbuster on both Kanyon and David Arquette, and that's enough for the win. Hooray! Judy is safe, the kingdom is safe, the dragon is slain, and our hero, thy name is Buff. Buff gets his ma down from the forklift, they're all happy, they leave together, and back in the ring, Kanyon hits a Kanyon cutter on Arquette to pop the crowd, and mercifully, this match is at an end. Outside the venue we go now, where we see a purple limousine has turned up with a police escort and like security service types all around. Who on earth could be making such a garish over-the-top entrance? Maybe it's an egotistical heel like Jeff Jarrett, or maybe just a big name in WCW like Kevin Nash or someone. Maybe it's Vince Russo by this point. I honestly wouldn't be surprised. Have a guess now. If your guess was humorless dead-eyed robot man Lance Storm, you'd be absolutely correct. He's going to be in action later on, but for now, it's an update from the announce team on our #1 contenders match later on tonight, the one between Goldberg, Scott Steiner, and Kevin Nash, because Goldberg has been involved in a motorcycle accident up at the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, which usually would have been the venue of WCW's August pay-per-views in previous years, shows like Road Wild and Hog Wild, but at this point, it's not. It's New Blood Rising in Vancouver, so bit of a change of pace. The point is, Goldberg's been in a motorcycle accident. Will he be here in time for his match? And more importantly, will he be healthy to compete? And I think this is meant to be like a serious moment in the show, like a this is actually real moment, and oh wow, what's happening behind the scenes? What's going to happen to Goldberg? But it's hard to take it seriously because they seem very blasé about it on commentary. That's because with Lance Storm arriving just the previous segment, as we cut to the announce team to break this motorcycle accident news to us, Mark Madden's just like vamping in a Canadian flag. This show, man, this whole show. Alright, time for our next match then. It's the 4-way tag team match with the Filthy Animals all involved as special guest referees as per their earlier agreement with the Cat. Oh good, I'm glad this show is about to get back on track. You might have noticed as the Filthy Animals come out that they also have the tag belts with them. They're not the champions currently though, they just stole them in the build-up to this show. The 4 teams in this match are recent WCW training school graduates Mark Jindrak and Sean O'Haire, heel former champions The Perfect Event, babyface current champions and ginormous scary men Chronic, and my boys of course, General Rection and Corporal Cajun from the Misfits! In action with Super Soakers. Oh! Now, you don't need me to tell you that this match is an absolute mess with its 8 competitors and 5 special guest referees. Actually, luckily, it's just 4 special guest referees because Conan decides to join the announce table. So this is what I think the story of the match is, right? Disco Inferno is like the lead special guest referee, while the other Filthy Animals are like outside enforcers, right? And whenever Jindrak or O'Haire make a pinfall attempt, Disco counts fast because he wants them to win. But when one of the other teams makes a pinfall attempt, he counts slow. And I think the implication is that the Filthy Animals want Jindrak and O'Haire to win because they've got a title shot against the winners the next night on Nitro, and they'll want to face the least experienced team of the 4. But the reason this is weird is that Jindrak and O'Haire, despite being inexperienced, are clearly young, nimble, very athletic, and very impressive in this match. In fact, they get the most impressive spots to do over the course of the match, therefore making the Filthy Animals plan seem really nonsensical. What I'm actually saying is, I don't think Vince Russo put much thought into this one. Like, it's such a weird way to get them over. Oh yeah, this team are getting a hand from the corrupt referee because he wants to face them the next night because they're rubbish. Oh wait, they're not rubbish. They're great at doing all these moves and they're so nimble. But they must be rubbish because the... Anyway, at one point, the other members of the Filthy Animals on the outside get bored and just get involved. Tigress hits a Bronco Buster. Ray tries to do one as well, but it goes hilariously wrong. Good, I'm glad we've not had enough bad comedy on this show yet. But the most annoying part of this match for me, without question, is the fact that the announce team clearly haven't been briefed on what the story is. It was clear to me, as an audience member, that Disco was trying to help Jindrak and O'Haire get the win. But that unfolded as the match went on, because Tony Schiavone kept getting in the way and confusing me, because Tony clearly has no clue what's happening. He's watching the same match as me, right? But Tony's going, I think that Disco's trying to help the perfect event, and he says this right as Disco ignores a perfect event pinfall attempt. So many words. Schiavone is getting so annoying during this match that Conan actually tries to help him out as well. Remember, Conan's on commentary for this one as well. He's like, well, I think our guys probably want to face the least experienced team the next night on Nitro. And Schiavone cuts him off and goes, doesn't seem like you guys want anyone to win, actually. I'm like, it's Jindrak and O'Haire. It's Jindrak and O'Haire. It's Mark Jindrak. And it's Sean O'Haire. That's Raphael and that's Kevin Phillips. Although we could now start referring to them as Jindrak and O'Haire if you wish. Finally, just when it seems like the match is about to come to an end and Chronic hit what appears to be a big double team finisher, it's obviously now time for interference, as Great Muta's back, this time with his Dark Carnival stablemate, and my boy as well, of course, Vampiro. Always been a bit of a guilty pleasure of mine. I do love me some Vampiro. But not here I don't, because their interference is entirely ineffective as Muta and Vampiro get pretty easily dealt with by Chronic, who then go back into their finishing sequence, but Disco refuses to count the pin. And just to put the cherry on top of this awful, ungodly cake, Chavo Guerrero runs in, although at this point he's known as Lieutenant Loco, of course, of the Misfits in action, and he lays Disco Inferno out. Chavo takes the referee shirt off Disco, throws it on himself, sort of, it's kind of falling off as he counts the pinfall, but it's Chronic's pinfall. Not the pinfall for his own team, the Misfits in action, no. One of the Misfits in action stable ran out to help a different team win the match that wasn't the Misfits in action. I felt there for a second like I was about to weep tears. Backstage we go, where Jeff Jarrett is being interviewed, and he says that his opponent tonight, Booker T, isn't at the venue yet because Jarrett's been looking for him all day and he can't find him anywhere. And guess what? In the main event, Booker T, Jarrett's going to kick your ass. Why does it feel like a lot of the kind of latter-day WCW and indeed early-day TNA shows I've covered over the years, why does it feel like a common theme is Jarrett looking for his opponent over the course of the night, even though he's going to be facing them later on anyway? Jarrett uses that trope all the time, and I've really noticed it, especially around this time in WCW. Another trope I've noticed, which is true of this show as well, is the Goldberg's not here yet, will he turn up for his match? That's definitely been done more than once too. I imagine they're trying to kind of copy the Austin pop whenever it was like, Vince and his cronies, they've managed to get Austin, will he turn up? And then the glass shatters later on, the crowd go crazy. So I get some logic with the Goldberg one. Jarrett just likes complaining that his opponent isn't here yet, even though it's miles until the main event of the show. The next match is the culmination of possibly the worst storyline on this whole show. It's the franchise Shane Douglas taking on Billy Kidman, and Douglas is accompanied by his girlfriend, Tori Wilson. The storyline behind this one is offensive and stupid. Thank you at this stage to the legendary archive of awful wrestling throughout history, WrestleCrap, who have a great piece on this storyline and just breaking down all the awful aspects of it, which came in very handy doing research for this part, and it's where I got a few of the images as well that I'm about to use in this little rundown. I'll put a link to that piece in the description down below. So basically, this is the storyline of this feud. Tori Wilson betrayed her boyfriend Billy Kidman, leaving him and then hooking up with Shane Douglas. That's the start. So Billy got his revenge in the build to this show by playing a tape on the Tron of their, shall we say, intimate time without Tori knowing that he was going to do that. Billy's the babyface, by the way. So Shane Douglas and Tori Wilson try to get revenge on Billy by playing their own tape of intimate times. But Billy, that prankster, he's switched the tapes out, so somehow they accidentally instead air a tape of Douglas, shall we say, struggling to perform. This leads to and I'm not making this up, a Viagra on a pole match between Douglas and Billy. Douglas wins, and in the aftermath, in the post-match beatdown, he stuffs Billy's mouth full of Viagra. But surprise, this backfires on the silly heel Shane Douglas, because Billy's now so Viagra'd up that he takes home 3 of the wonderful Nitro girls for intimate time once again. At this time period, by the way, WWF was enjoying what is commonly considered to be one of the greatest calendar years in the history of the promotion. Just thought I'd throw that out there, just for a bit of contrast. So anyway, the next week, Billy airs one final tape on the Tron. Why do we keep giving him access to the production truck? And it's of Tori Wilson's 16th birthday. And the joke is that Tori Wilson used to be fat. It's literally the Monica joke from Friends. And yes, if you're keeping track, by the way, it is the second concurrent angle where the punchline is Vince Russo finds overweight women funny. Billy then drops hundreds of printed out photographs of young overweight Tori Wilson into the arena. Again, he is the babyface, just remember that. But as this is all happening, Billy is attacked by a new member of the roster called Reno, because he's the boyfriend of one of the Nitro girls that Billy got down with after the Viagra in the mouth. That's the build. That's this match's build. Now on with the match. Billy Kidman versus the franchise Shane Douglas, accompanied by Tori Wilson. It's a strap match as well, by the way. There's a stipulation to this match that I almost forgot to mention because there's just, in the words of Natalie Imbruglia, there's just so many things. And because it's a strap match, the opening stages are filled with kind of classic strap match spots. The kind of, the babyface is outwitting the heel. Whoa, the kind of stuff that I probably would quite be enjoying if this show hadn't filled me with the kind of existential dread that I haven't experienced since reading Samuel Beckett's Endgame, a one-act play set in a post-apocalyptic hellscape featuring just 4 characters who ruminate on the end of the world, and 2 of the characters also live in bins. Kidman uses the strap to yank Douglas into the ring post, a spot we don't really see because a ringside photographer kind of gets in the way, and then a Tori Wilson distraction allows Douglas to take control of the bout. Billy starts to make his comeback, however, so Tori tries to get involved to help Shane, prompting Mark Madden on commentary to shout, "She's turned heel! She's turned heel!" which is stupid for 2 reasons. One, because once again it's another example of a shoot phrase being used which devalues everything kayfabe on the show, and also because she's already a heel. Tori tries to hit Billy with her shoe, he ducks, Shane Douglas takes the shot from the shoe instead. 1-2, Douglas kicks out and the match continues. Oh no, let's get to the end. Tori gets on the apron, Billy runs Douglas into Tori on the apron, Tori takes the contact and doesn't take the bump down to the floor. It certainly felt like she was meant to. Like she takes the contact from Shane and then just absolutely firms it. Like Tomohiro Ishii, no-selling a shoulder block or something. But shortly afterwards, Billy Kidman hits the Kid Crusher and gets the win. Tori tries to attack Billy after the bell, so he spanks her with the strap, cheap pop from the crowd. And then Douglas attacks Billy, and in a surprisingly brutal moment, uses his own body as a platform from which to dangle Billy by the neck. Feels like a spot out of a different promotion entirely, really. Maybe like Prime ECW or something. Certainly not Russo Poopy Fart Wrestling 2000, official name. Billy's fellow babyface Big Vito runs in to chase Douglas away and make the save, but then Vito is attacked by Reno, the one whose Nitro Girl girlfriend Billy got so jiggy with. But instead of focusing his assault on Billy, Reno actually goes for Vito instead, and the announce team are like, "Ooh, there must be history here between Reno and Vito. What's going on?" So he doesn't care about the girlfriend angle anymore. This leads to a feud between Reno and Vito. And I couldn't find a reason for it, but if you waded through WCW around this time, please do let me know in the comment section down below. Or if you value your sanity, just don't bother. Anyway, Vito fights off Reno here, so the run-in's not even that effective, and Reno would go on to join the Natural Born Thrillers stable shortly after this show, along with the likes of Jindrak, O'Hare, Sean Stasiak, and Chuck Palumbo from the tag match, of course. A team of hot, new and up-and-coming talent on the scene, led by above-average Mike Sanders, and also featuring Johnny the Bull, I think, is there as well. And the Natural Born Thrillers. Back to the parking lot now, where Booker T's arrived for the show and is of course immediately attacked by Jeff Jarrett. I love this one shot of Jarrett sneaking up on Booker wearing the brightest lime green shirt you've ever seen. Jarrett uses the car door to injure Booker's leg, smashy, smashy, smash, and then Jarrett says, "Booker, you ain't even gonna make it to the main event. I'm Southern Gentleman Jeff Jarrett, who smashes legs in car doors." And I'm like, this makes no sense. You had your title shot, Jeff. Why would you injure Booker in the build, risking the match being called off? He can't defend his title like that, and if he can't, well, you're not going to get rewarded with a title shot. You caused that injury. This is Bizarro Russo land, though, so maybe he would have done. Anyway, time for mud wrestling. This is the only women's match on the show, obviously, and it features Major Guns from the Misfit. I don't even have the energy to really do that anymore. She's taking on Miss Hancock, or we might know her better these days as Stacy Keibler. They're feuding, by the way, over David Flair. You might remember from the Bash at the Beach episode that Daphne was feuding with Miss Hancock over David Flair, and now Major Guns is feuding with Miss Hancock over... The ladies all love David Flair. What can I say? This is the other ludicrous stipulation match, by the way. More for how it's used, which we'll see later on at the end of the match. But for now, the rules also don't make sense. So this is a mud wrestling match, but the announce team explained it's kind of like bra and panties rules, where you've got to rip off the attire of your opponent. But then the match begins and we get pinfall attempts straight away. And they don't ever mention how the mud comes into play. Once again, Russo clearly didn't put any thought into this, so why am I bothering? So the match plods along anyway. Occasionally one will rip a layer of outer clothing from the other, even though there's pinfalls, and that's it's just what you'd expect. If you want any actual analysis, Stacy's the better worker of the two. There you go. That's my analysis there. I mean, she even does a kip up at one point. She's the Heartbreak Kid. But a weird thing starts happening, which is that whenever Stacy Keibler takes damage to her midsection, she sells it really heavily, and the match kind of grinds to a halt whenever this occurs. And I'm like, wait, of all the matches on this card, the mud wrestling bra and panties kind of match is the one where we've got consistent targeted limb work or body part selling. Why is that? Have we entered the G1 climax? The answer is no. No, that's not what's happening. But what is happening is actually really bad. Arguably the worst thing on this show. So first of all, they fight over to the mud pit and it's like, they've ended up in the mud. Oh, you'll never believe it. Shucks. Stacy takes control of the fight in the mud, and she stops to do her dance taunt, but then she interrupts her dance to really heavily sell the midsection at this point. Major Guns takes advantage, rolls Stacy up, 1, 2, 3, and Major Guns wins the match. Then things get really weird. The match is over, but Stacy's still screaming in pain, and David Flair runs out from the back to check on her, and even her opponent, Major Guns, is checking on her. Yes, it's a worked shoot. And yes, as you may have predicted, horrifyingly, the storyline heading forwards from this is that Stacy Keibler is secretly pregnant and there's been a horrible tragedy. And I'm blown away by how tasteless this is, but I'm also blown away by how stupid this is. And I honestly think this might be the most Russo thing ever. So first of all, you've got your sexy ladies match, ooh, and it's aged horribly, of course, and it doesn't look good these days. But unfortunately, this kind of was the state of mainstream women's wrestling in the year 2000. But then also, Russo's booking is so warped and so unchecked and so out of control at this point that he cannot help but inject his kind of worked shoot nonsense into the eye candy match. It's baffling. Like the tonal whiplash, I can't emphasize enough how jarring it is to watch. Suddenly we've gone from, oh, it's the sexy mud match, to, right, here comes the stretcher, and oh my god, we all hope that Stacy Keibler's okay, and the announce team are using their serious voices. It's ridiculous booking from an unbelievably stupid booker, I'm sorry to say. And by the way, right, this would lead into a Who's the Father storyline, where it would be revealed so long after this show, like half a year later or something, it would be revealed that, oh, Stacey was never pregnant and she made it up for attention. I'm not kidding, that was the end of this storyline. And also, there are rumours out there suggesting that the mystery father was going to be revealed to be, you'll never guess, Vince Russo himself. Except by the time of the reveal, he wasn't around anymore, so they couldn't do that. I'd say that's unbelievable as a rumour, but it sadly is believable. Anyway, after that, we do have to carry on with the show, and we go from our shocked, serious, worked shoot announcer voices to the Dark Carnival backstage. Bleh. It's Vampiro, it's the Great Muta, and it's the Demon Dale Torborg. You might remember the Demon Dale Torborg from the Bash at the Beach one, where he was taking on Vampiro in a graveyard match, but now they're allies. But Vampiro still thinks that the Demon Dale Torborg kind of sucks. Yeah, Vampiro's being a mean stable leader here. He's a mean boss, and he tells the Demon Dale Torborg, hey, you better prove yourself tonight by beating Sting. And I'm like, Sting? Yeah, he's not beating... We know who's going to win that match. In the build to this one, the Dark Carnival trapped Sting in a coffin, set it on fire, and Sting was fine. So just once again, the Demon's not winning this match. Briefly, we go outside once again to see Stacy being loaded into an ambulance. And the announce team at this point straight up tell us, they say, and I quote, "That was not part of the match." Okay, yeah, I think we might believe them, guys. That's why they're showing her being loaded into an... It doesn't matter. It's time for the Demon-Dale Torborg versus Sting. The Demon-Dale Torborg has a boring normal entrance. Sting comes down from the rafters. Hell yeah. And they brawl on the ramp. They make their way into the ring and the bell rings. The match officially begins. Stinger splash. Scorpion death drop. 1, 2, 3. Sting wins. One of the biggest babyfaces, if not the biggest babyface in the company at this time. And that's all the Sting you're getting tonight, folks. Vampiro and Muta attack Sting as he celebrates, and they try to choke him with his entrance rope hanging down from the rafters, but Chronic make the save. Chronic get in the ring, they cut a promo saying, "Hey, someone told us Vancouver was down with Chronic, if you know what I mean," and the crowd all go, "Woo! Yeah, we are!" And I love this bit. On the outside, Muta slams a chair down in anger. He's like, "God damn it! I didn't know that Vancouver was down with Chronic." Now, of course, the Dark Carnival attacked Chronic in their tag title match, the 4-way, which Chronic successfully retained in. But now Chronic, in kind of a Yokozuna WrestleMania 9 move, offer a further title defense to the Dark Carnival on this show. Not immediately afterwards, like Yokozuna did, but like a little way into the show. Yes, we are getting bonus wrestling. Great. Good. Even more New Blood Rising, you guys. Backstage, Booker T's injured leg is being checked on, and he's like, "Get that camera out of my face." And it's the single most convincing thing I've seen on this entire show. Our next match is for the United States title between heel champion Lance Storm and babyface challenger Mike Awesome. But Storm, you may notice, has 3 titles, each with a Canadian flag on it. That's because at this stage, he is the most powerful heel mid-carder in all of the land. He's won not only the US title, but the hardcore title and the cruiserweight title all at the same time, and he's rebranded each of them in like Canadian ways because he's a heel. But this show, though, is in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. So what's going to happen? Storm gets in the ring and says, "Right, Mike Awesome, don't know if you knew this, pal, but this match is going to be fought under Canadian rules." This is a common trope in wrestling, of course. You may be familiar with it, where the heel will use made-up rules to like weasel their way out of a match often, and there's like several falls. You think the babyface has won, but then the heel goes, "Oh wait, you can't hit me with a body slam on the first of the month." It's like that kind of stuff. And it's a device used to get heat for the heel. But again, we're in Canada, so Storm's, for one night only, yeah, but Storm's the face here. So we're just going to get a waste of time? Yes, correct. So we're getting the tedious, pompous, made-up rules heel thing, and also, you know, Mike Awesome, the babyface, is just going to look like a fool and get laughed at and probably get beaten. I don't know how it helps him, and it also doesn't really help Storm because he's not getting the heel heat he would have gotten in the States. Anyway, Storm's doing the Canadian heel thing. You might be wondering what Mike Awesome's up to around this time. Mike Awesome is the fat chick thriller. Yes, it's the third concurrent storyline centered around, in my view, Vince Russo not liking larger women. Awesome's a bigger women preferring babyface at this point, but in the build to this one, his main lady, Heidi, turned on Mike Awesome and revealed that, oh my god, she's actually Canadian. So there we go. So anyway, on with the match. But just before it begins, Lance Storm says, "Wait, I'm going to bring out a Canadian wrestling legend to help enforce the rules of this Canadian rules match." And wouldn't you know it, the crowd erupts at this point because the rumors were that this was going to be none other than Bret the Hitman Hart. Like, everyone in the crowd immediately starts chanting Bret. And I get jump scared by the largest Canadian flag I've ever seen in my life. Look at the size of that thing. It's not Bret Hart, though. It's Jacques Rougeau. They are actively trying to turn fans away from their product at this point. They must be. That's the only possible explanation. Just to waste a bit more time before the match begins, we get a full rendition of "Oh Canada." You know, Storm loves it. Jacques Rougeau loves it. Juggalo guy in the Punisher t-shirt loves it. And finally, the match is underway. Rougeau was billed as the special guest referee, by the way. He's not. He's on the outside. Not a single thing on this show is as advertised, is it? Despite the silly gimmick, Mike Awesome at this point was still kind of awesome, though, so it is still a Mike Awesome match. It's got that going for it. And Lance Storm, great worker as well, of course. This could have been so good. Mike tries to put Lance Storm through a table on the outside early on, but Lance avoids it. So back in the ring, Awesome heads up top and slips off the top rope. And the crowd all jeer him. And I'm like, shut up! Mike Awesome is trying his best. He makes up for it, though, with, to be fair, a hell of an awesome bomb. 1, 2, Storm gets the shoulder up, ref counts 3, bell rings. Nothing on this show is going right. Anyway, let's pretend that Storm didn't mess up and this was actually a 3 count, because otherwise the story of the match doesn't make any sense. So let's pretend it was a 3. Jacques Rougeau gets on the mic, gets on the mic and says, no, wait, in Canadian rules, you can't win with a 3 count, actually. You need it to be a 5 count. Because apparently Jacques Rougeau's from Birmingham. You need to be a 5 count, please, mate. Oh, I'm from Birmingham. Right, the match continues. Apologies to everyone from Birmingham. The match continues. Alabama Slam, nice. And then Mike follows up with a Dragon Sleeper, actually. And Lance Storm taps out, but Rougeau gets on the mic and you can't win a Canadian rules match with a submission. Okay. So the match carries on. Awesome heads up top. Big top rope splash. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Awesome wins, right? That's the 5 count. No. Rougeau interrupts to say, right, once a pinfall's been made, then the person who's being pinned actually also has 10 seconds to make it to their feet. It's kind of like a Texas deathmatch kind of thing. Lance does make it to his feet before 10, and the match continues. The table on the outside from earlier ends up in the ring. Both men end up on the top rope, and they both fall through the table. And Rougeau says, right, now it's the first one to make it to their feet, and they win the match. And because he's the brave babyface, Mike Awesome is almost the first one to his feet, but Rougeau clocks him behind the actual referee's back, and Lance Storm makes it to his feet and retains the title, as 100% of us knew he would heading into this thing. That was tedious and pointless. Lance celebrates, and who's this to join in with the celly? It's none other than, it's Bret the Hitman Hart. So he was in the building. So why wasn't he just in the Jacques Rougeau role? My best and only guess is that Bret Hart saw what Russo had planned for this, saw what the match was going to be, and basically said, nah, I'm going to sit this one out. It's just my own theory, but knowing what Bret Hart is like, I wouldn't be surprised if it was true. To the back we go again, where Kevin Nash is doubting the legitimacy of Goldberg's motorcycle accident. But it looks like their triple threat is now just going to be Kev versus Scotty Steiner. And Nash says to the interviewer, look, I'm in this business for 2 things, money and the belt. So I'll be going over tonight. Yes, it's another instance of like kayfabe breaking language, insider terms being used, going over there to win a wrestling match. A bit weird for Nash to be using that in the build to his match, but as we'll see later on, the whole match is kind of a work shoot nonsense. We'll get there, but not before the impromptu tag team match that was set up just before, the Dark Carnival versus Chronic. I feel like I'm approaching the end of a marathon. The champions take control, working over Vampiro, but then the Great Muta breaks up a pinfall attempt by just grabbing the referee from the apron. But honestly, any kind of shenanigans at this stage, I almost feel quite numb to. I have become so numb. The faces beat the heels down on the inside of the ring. They beat them down on the outside of the ring. The heels make a little bit of a comeback, but the faces are bigger and stronger, and they make the big comeback. And then Brian Clark hits the meltdown, his big finisher, on Vampiro. Doesn't make the cover yet, though, Brian Clark. Doesn't. For no discernible reason other than it's not time for the finish of the match yet. Great Muta missed the referee, and then everybody in the crowd's attention is captured by something. What's going on over yonder? Why, it's the Harris brothers heading down to the ring. Oh, the Harris brothers, the kind of the plodding, boring journeymen of the tag team scene around this time. The ones with the questionable tattoos. Them. Yeah. So this match is basically an excuse, I guess, to reintroduce the Harris brothers as they beat down Chronic and allow the Dark Carnival to win those belts. And if you were keeping track, yes, this of course means that rather than Chronic, the babyface champions, taking on the heel challengers, the Filthy Animals, the next night on Nitro, as was promised, it's now going to be the heel Filthy Animals taking on the new heel champions, the Dark Carnival. Why? I don't know. And that match will be won by the Filthy Animals, actually, thanks to interference from Sting. I can't remember why. If you know, let me know. I don't know if you even care. I don't know why anybody... What's the point? Booker T is interviewed and says that despite the attack on his leg from Jarrett earlier on, he's still going to compete and he's still going to defend the WCW Heavyweight Championship. And with everything else being so overblown and just so weird on this show, the fact that the main event, the Booker versus Jarrett match, is being built so normally is honestly kind of making me feel funny about it. I'm like, if everything's the weird stuff, then the normal stuff is the weird stuff, and the weird has become the normal. But before we get to that, the boring kayfabe main event, it's time for the real main event for us shooters, right guys? It's the triple threat. It's Nash, Steiner, and Goldberg if he shows up. Now obviously this match features 3 of the biggest stars in the company, but can I just shock you for a second? It's actually more about Vince Russo. The build to this match is that wrestling isn't real. I'm not kidding. You see, in the build to this match, on TV, Vince Russo is interviewed and just openly acknowledges that he's writing this show and he makes all the decisions and it's all scripted. And Russo says, without revealing who it's going to be, he says the man he chooses as the winner of this match, the one who's going over, will be what's best for WCW. Can you believe how ridiculous that is? For the build to a wrestling match on a wrestling pay-per-view to be, this isn't real by the way. The real drama comes from who I choose is going to win. That's mad. Anyway, the Bash at the Beach, the previous pay-per-view, Scott Steiner turned heel. He betrayed the babyface Kevin Nash, which meant that Scott Hall's contract, Nash's best friend of course, Scott Hall's contract was ripped up and he's not allowed back in WCW. You might think, oh, Steiner, big heel now. Steiner is a heel, but he's kind of just on a rampage, just indiscriminately attacking everybody in the build to this one. Heels and babyfaces backstage. He really wants that title shot. And that's Steiner's kind of story in the build to this, which is pretty kayfabe, it's pretty normal, but then Nash and Goldberg stuff is just as shooty as Russo, baby. Nash, of course, is annoyed about Scott Hall's contract being ripped up and him being kept out of WCW, which is a storyline, but Nash also thinks that in reality, Russo is keeping Scott Hall out of WCW. So Nash has also been all saying that he doesn't care who's booked to go over in this match. He'll be going over himself. And hey, maybe he'll shoot on Goldberg if he's got a problem with that. And finally, the final part of this equation, Bill Goldberg. He's been a heel for a little while now. Hasn't been going that well. Not a great heel turn for WCW. So in his shoot-style interview in the build to this one, Goldberg just acknowledges that and says, yeah, I'm really not enjoying playing the heel at the minute. That was a bad decision. Sorry about that, guys. And then Goldberg says, by the way, Kevin Nash might think that I'm a football player turned wrestler who hasn't paid his dues and doesn't understand the business. But look, I got more over in 3 years than Nash did in his entire career. And I'm like, kind of, yeah. Goldberg also implies that he's gonna fire some live rounds in this match as well. Who's gonna win in a fight between Kevin Nash and Goldberg with Scott Steiner also there? We'll have to wait and see. So as you can see, the build to this triple threat is that wrestling isn't real. Usually. But in this instance, these guys are all telling the truth. What's going to happen? But crucially, it's all still a work because it was all written. So still it's not real, but it's devalued everything else on the show. In my opinion, this is barely pro wrestling. I guess not really anymore, is it? It doesn't really resemble what wrestling is meant to be. It's self-indulgent, it's overcomplicated, but if you're gonna do that, at least have the decency to make it clever. But Russo couldn't make this clever, so it's just stupid. So let's see what happens. Let's see who Russo is picked to go over and whether those guys will be alright about that and what's gonna happen. Nash comes out, Steiner comes out, Goldberg's not here yet. Now I'm a little bit confused about the motorcycle accident angle, because Goldberg's music plays here several times and he doesn't come out and everybody's annoyed and Nash is like, come on, let's just get the show on the road, we don't need Goldberg. And the announce team are like, oh man, is Goldberg not showing up? But I'm like, but what about the motorcycle accident thing? But then earlier Nash cast doubt on the legitimacy of that, didn't he? So he was like, yeah, Goldberg's lying. So I think the implication is meant to be that the motorcycle accident isn't real, but Goldberg's refusing to turn up and do the job because he was meant to be losing this match. That's what I'm guessing, but they really don't make that clear at all, so I could be wrong. Also, on this WCW show, they decide to show this sign: Goldberg fears Gilbert. Yes, our top heel fears the WWF parody jobber version of himself, and we are deciding to broadcast that on our own pay-per-view. The match gets underway without Goldberg, and it's just Nash and Steiner, and they're brawling on the outside while the announce team are tying themselves in knots trying to work out, well, is this a work or is this a shoot? What's going on here? And I'm like, This honestly might be the worst attempt at a wrestling product I've ever seen. And then all of a sudden, oh my god, Goldberg's here after all, and he's gonna shoot. He's gonna beat up Nash for real with a relatively gentle chair shot. A very worked move to start off this apparently real brawl. And then the match settles down into more like recognisable worked wrestling that we all know, but Goldberg's all taped up, I've noticed. So was the motorcycle accident real then? I don't know. I've made no secret that I really don't like Mark Madden's commentary, but Scott Hudson drops an absolute clanger at this point as well. He starts openly talking about how, well, guys, remember, Goldberg had that undefeated streak until Kevin Nash was on the booking committee, and then guess what? No more undefeated streak for Goldberg. I'm like, first of all, why are we talking about this? But secondly, Scott Hudson also says, back at Starrcade 88, just a decade out of time there, Scott. Steiner gets a near fall at this point and argues with the ref for a bit, which allows Nash to take control of the match. And I realise at this time that for a bout billed as real and wild and unpredictable and potentially a bit of a shoot fight, what it actually resembles is three heavyweights slowly hitting moves on each other. Anyway, Nash takes control of the match at this point, sets up Goldberg for the jackknife powerbomb, but rather than go up for it, Goldberg just steps away. And the announce team lose their mind. Oh, he's shooting, he's refusing to go up, he's not going to do the job. Goldberg walks out of the match, and on the ramp as he leaves, he is encountered by the star of the show, Vince Russo. And it's very important, guys, that we realise that Vince Russo is actually a tough guy in real life, because he stands up to Goldberg. He's like, get back in there and do the job, Bill. And Bill's like, F you, man, and he storms off. But Russo, he might have defied Russo, but Russo wasn't intimidated by Goldberg. Not for a second, you guys. I don't care. Why is the writer on screen? I know Russo's been on screen before this, but this is like the worst. This is the worst. Until later on in WCW's remaining time, when Russo would become WCW champion. But that's a different story for another time. So Goldberg storms to the back, and I don't know, you guys, I think that maybe what we've just seen was real and not part of the plan. No, of course it was part of the plan. It was so obviously acted and hammy, and I don't know who they were trying to fool with this. Who did they think would buy this? I also love the fact that even this couldn't just be the only worked shoot on such an overblown show, and this came after the Stacy Keibler stuff, thereby reducing the impact of it. Like, Russo just couldn't help himself. Anyway, Steiner and Nash carry on the match, and, you know, the announce team are, like, commending them for being so professional. Like, well, these guys are working out a finish, I suppose. But, and this is very telling, the crowd are silent at this stage. Here comes Steiner's valet, Madeja, to interfere, and she hits a low blow on Nash, and then Nash hits a low blow on Steiner, and you've just got these two blokes just sat around holding their balls going, Meanwhile, this guy is telling us what he thinks of this wrestling show. The refs bumped at one point around this time as well, but it doesn't really matter because he then recovers. Nash goes for a pinfall attempt, Madeja runs in and just breaks up the pinfall attempt in full view of the referee, so what was the bump for? And if they were trying to simulate a rubbish improvised ending to a match, they've kind of nailed that. Time for the big finish. Nash is annoyed at Madeja for breaking up his pinfall attempt. He corners her, Steiner saves her, and then Nash hits the big boot on Steiner and the jackknife powerbomb. And that's the match. Look, I've explained enough already when I was talking about the build why I don't like this and why I think it barely counts as pro wrestling. But it goes without saying, if your build to a match is that this is real and all the other matches on the show, they're not real, but this is, and it turns out to be rubbish anyway, how was that ever going to work? Nash wins! Hooray, Kevin Nash! You're the number one contender now. But Nash obviously looks angry because Goldberg went off script earlier on in the bout. Who cares? Well, actually, I would care if I was Booker T or Jeff Jarrett, because after watching all of that and being bashed over the head with the fact that wrestling isn't real, now we have to have the main event, which is presented as real. But one man who seems blissfully unaffected and probably unaware of everything that's going on is Mikey B. He's here to do the big main event ring introductions. I don't know how anybody who bought this pay-per-view would have been able to muster the energy to care about it at this point, but we're going to give it a go anyway. Here comes Booker T, limping heavily during his entrance, and as the match begins, Jarrett's on him straight away at the bell, attacking that wounded leg. The opening stages actually get across Booker's sense of desperation really well. Like, he knows that he's weakened here, and he knows that his title reign is in danger, so he's going for quick roll-ups, he's going for instant pinfall attempts. It all makes perfect sense. Booker pulls Jarrett's winkle into the ring post, but then Jarrett works his way back into the match and starts going back after that injured leg. The wrong leg. He definitely misremembers. Go for the one with the giant knee brace on it, Jeff. Fortunately, Jarrett remembers, and he really heals out on that injured leg, ramming it into the ring post, hitting it with a chair. None of this is real or matters. Booker survives a Boston Crab and makes his way back into the match, hitting the always impressive axe kick and the spinneroonie, and he's back to his feet, and then he lightly brushes the referee with one arm, and the referee takes an almighty dive. I am on my hands and knees by this point, by the way. Like, after everything we've watched, after everything we've been through, can we not just have one clean finish, please? No, we can't, as Jarrett counters a jumping knee from Booker with a guitar to the injured leg, and then the referee recovers as Jarrett has clamped in the figure 4 leg lock, which he keeps locked in for ages. But Booker is so brave, so strong, and finally makes the ropes. Booker rolls to the outside to recover, and the referee goes after him to check on him, and here comes Jarrett running around the ring with the title belt, swings it, but Booker ducks, and now the referee is bumped again, at least convincingly this time. The brawl continues, we get a bookend off the apron through a table, oh my. A new referee comes out, and Booker could now easily win by countout, but he doesn't want to retain the belt that way, and he drags Jeff back inside, makes the cover 1-2, Jarrett gets a foot on the ropes, and I'm like, Booker, you could have ended this. You could have ended this show for us. All of a sudden, Jarrett is miraculously back to full health. He goes to the outside, gets a chair, takes out the replacement referee, hits the stroke on Booker onto the chair, and now Booker's done, surely. Jeff goes to make the pinfall, but there's no ref. We all know that there's only one referee fast enough for such a situation. Yes, of course, it's Super Charles Robinson who sprints to the ring, makes the count 1-2, and of course, the champion survives. The match continues, and then Booker hits, of all things, I think a diamond cutter, but the commentators call it a swinging backbreaker, so I don't know. Jarrett survives that, but then Booker hits the bookend shortly afterwards and mercifully retains the title. Big, deep breath, everybody, because as Booker celebrates with the belt, having retained the title, he is our emotional mirror, because his exhaustion mirrors our exhaustion, and his triumph mirrors our triumph, because we have made it to the end of New Blood Rising. So what did we think of the show? I think here Russo fundamentally misunderstood, this sounds so pretentious, I think Russo misunderstood the heart of pro wrestling. What pro wrestling is supposed to mean, and what it means to us, the fans. And you know what the weirdest thing is? I can sort of understand how he misunderstood it so badly. I can sort of see why this happened. Because just look at WCW, like just 4 or 5 years prior. It was very successful off the back of, you know, the outsiders coming in and how exciting that was because it played off real animosity between the two major companies at the time. And it was a kind of acknowledgement that, hey, wrestling's kind of staged, you know, and these are two real companies that really hate each other, and that's real. And let's look at the other side of the divide, where Russo was at the time in the WWF. And, you know, we had the Montreal Screwjob, a real incident which drew mass attention, and even though it was terrible and everything and very embarrassing for the company, kind of helped them out in the long run. And Russo was there for that, and he would have seen these things going on in the industry at the time, and he might have thought, wrestling's at its best when it's real, but you can't control the real situation, so we need to make it a worked shoot. And I can see in his own crazy way how New Blood Rising, or a show like it, maybe came to be. But obviously the mistake he made is that these two things, you know, the outsiders jumping ship and the Montreal Screwjob, they're just outliers. They're kind of anomalies. And that's not really what wrestling's about. And in the decades since the 90s, of course, we have seen aspects of wrestling that have played upon the kind of worked shoot stuff to try and generate a bit of buzz. CM Punk's Pipe Bomb, for example, the Bullet Club, for another example, they're kind of very meta, or were in their heyday, weren't they? Poking fun at the established tropes of wrestling. But it's extra flavor, it's optional, and it's occasional, and it's not what the main point of wrestling should be. Anyway, I'm a very tired boy, Thank you very much for watching. Thank you to the grand old people on my Patreon for voting for this show. Thank you so much. I've been Jack the Jobber. I hope you've enjoyed this. Leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below, and do like, share, and subscribe, and all that good stuff if you want as well. Thank you once again, and I will see you very soon.